I remember staring at a piece of crisp white paper under the bright fluorescent lights of a medical office a few years ago. It was my annual physical summary. The doctor had just spent all of 7 minutes with me, patted me on the shoulder, and told me that all my blood work looked perfectly normal for a man my age. He said I was good to go for another year. I folded that paper, put it in my jacket pocket, and walked out to the parking lot. But as I walked to my truck, my legs felt like they were filled with wet sand. My joints were carrying a dull, persistent ache that never really went away, and there was a heavy fog in my head that made it hard to focus on the drive back to Charlotte. The paper in my pocket said I was fine, but the body I was living in told a completely different story. That is the dangerous gap where so many men of my generation lose their independence. We are raised to measure our strength by how much discomfort we can carry without complaining. We take a standard physical, we hear the word normal, and we accept whatever fatigue or pain we are feeling as just the natural cost of getting old. I am going to tell you exactly why that standard panel is not giving you the whole truth, the specific hidden markers I finally learned to demand, and how finding out the real numbers behind my fatigue completely changed the way my body feels today. When I spent my years supervising operations for the public transit system, we had a strict protocol for the fleet. You do not wait for a bus transmission to fail on the highway with 50 passengers on board. You run deep diagnostic checks on the fluid lines, the engine pressure, and the internal wear and tear long before any warning light blinks on the dashboard. You look for the quiet friction. But when it comes to our own bodies, the standard medical system operates on a different logic. The routine blood panels they order are mostly designed to tell you if you are currently in an active crisis. They are looking for the breakdown on the side of the road. You do not want your first real warning to be an emergency. I learned this the hard way after watching men I respected fall apart from things that had been silently building for a decade. A friend of mine had a massive stroke just a month after passing his routine physical with flying colors. That shook me. It made me realize that normal on a lab sheet just means you fit into a massive generalized average. It does not mean your engine is running clean. That was when I stopped nodding quietly in the examination room and started treating my health with the same rigorous scrutiny I used to apply to a fleet of city vehicles. I sat down with Danielle, my daughter who works in nutrition, and we started going through the numbers that actually predict a breakdown. The first blind spot I discovered was about blood sugar. For years, my doctor ran a standard fasting glucose test. It always came back fine. But a fasting glucose test is just a single snapshot of one moment on one morning. It is like looking out the window on a Tuesday, seeing sunshine, and assuming the entire season was dry. Blood sugar fluctuates all day, every day. Danielle told me I needed to look at the hemoglobin A1C. That test does not take a snapshot. It looks at the red blood cells and measures the average damage sugar has been doing to your system over the past 3 months. It is the full weather report. When I finally demanded the A1C test, my number came back sitting right in the pre-diabetes range. The standard snapshot had missed it entirely. High blood sugar was quietly damaging the small vessels in my body, accelerating the aging process in my brain and my kidneys, and my doctor had no idea because the right diagnostic tool was never pulled out of the toolbox. Once I saw that real number, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Control begins with what you stop normalizing. I changed my morning routine, I adjusted what Gloria and I kept in the pantry, and I brought that average down before it could become a permanent disease. The second number that changed everything for me explained the heavy, aching feeling in my legs that I had been blaming on decades of standing on concrete depot floors. I asked the cardiologist to check my 25-hydroxy vitamin D. People call it a vitamin, but it acts more like a master switch in your body that regulates your bones, your immune system, and your brain. When you get older, your skin just does not process sunlight the way it used to. And if you live a life mostly indoors, your levels plummet. My standard labs never caught it. When the specific test finally came back, my level was sitting in the basement, It was severely deficient. The lab report considered a low number to be acceptable. But there is a massive difference between what a lab calls acceptable and what your body needs to actually function without pain. I started a steady protocol to bring that number up, giving my body the structural support it was starving for. Within months, that deep ache in my knees and the exhaustion that shadowed my afternoons started to lift. It was not just the miles on the tires. The engine had been running without oil. Then we had to look at the rust. When you run heavy machinery, you know that heat and friction will destroy a system from the inside out. In the human body, that friction is called inflammation. Most of us go into the clinic, they check our cholesterol, and if it looks okay, they send us home. But cholesterol alone does not tell the story. The inflammation in your arteries is what causes the real damage, and standard panels almost never look for it. I asked for a test called high sensitivity CRP. It is a direct measurement of the quiet, low-grade fire burning inside your tissues. That is the fire that degrades your heart vessels and damages your brain over the years. My cousin passed away after ignoring his numbers for a long time, and I often wonder if his vessels were quietly rusting while his standard tests looked fine. Finding out your inflammation levels before you have a cardiovascular event is the most profound advantage you can give yourself. Pressure rarely goes up alone. It rises with the habits we ignore. Seeing my CRP number gave me the map I needed to adjust my movement and my meals to cool that internal friction down. There was another piece of the puzzle that was dragging my whole system down. A few winters ago, I felt a deep, unshakable fatigue. My thoughts felt thick, my digestion was slow, and I could not seem to stay warm, even sitting in my own living room in Charlotte. Marcus, my son, told me it was just the mileage of my age catching up with me. But I knew my own body. I pushed the doctor to look closely at my TSH, my thyroid-stimulating hormone. The thyroid is the idle speed of your engine. When it drops, every single system in your body struggles to turn over. The standard laboratory range for TSH is incredibly wide. A doctor will look at a high number, tell you it is technically within the boundaries, and send you home exhausted. But optimal function is a much narrower window. My idle speed was completely off, mimicking the signs of aging so perfectly that the medical system was ready to just write it off as getting older. Once we saw the exact number and addressed it, the lights came back on in the house. The last number I demanded is the one I think about the most when I sit on the porch with my 3 grandchildren. I want to be present for them. I want my memory sharp and my mind clear for as many years as I have left. I asked my cardiologist to check my homocysteine levels. Homocysteine is an amino acid that builds up in your blood like sludge when your body is lacking specific B vitamins. When that sludge accumulates, it becomes toxic to your brain tissue. It literally accelerates cognitive decline. The cardiologist was surprised I even brought it up. It is rarely tested. But when my results came back, the number was elevated. I was walking around with a completely correctable risk factor for memory loss, and no standard physical was ever going to catch it. Gloria and I made sure I started taking the right, highly absorbable forms of B vitamins to clear that sludge out of the system. I watched that number drop on my next blood draw, and with it, I felt a physical weight lift from my shoulders. The heart pays attention to what we repeat every day, and so does the brain. I did not wait for the system to offer me these answers. I took a piece of paper, wrote down hemoglobin A1C, 25-hydroxyvitamin D, high sensitivity CRP, TSH, and homocysteine. I walked into the exam room, handed it to the doctor, and said, "This is the baseline I need to see." I did not ask for permission to understand my own machinery. A stable life builds a stable body, but you cannot stabilize what you cannot see. I still have days where the joints ache and the energy is not what it was in my 40s. I have not found a fountain of youth, and I do not believe in miracles. But I am not walking in the dark anymore. I know what my engine is doing. I know where the friction is. I am sitting here today, watching the seasons change, managing the numbers, and staying in the driver's seat of my own life. The road ahead is not promised to any of us, but I am doing the maintenance required to make the ride as long and as steady as it can possibly be.